right, this video is the truth about abortion. This is a very important topic, obviously. People want to know what the truth is. Um, I feel grateful that I have found the truth. And I will tell you right now that it's thanks to Jesus. Jesus is on the earth right now. That's a hard thing for many people to swallow, but it is true and it's a good thing. He's clarifying the teachings that he first shared in the first century. And on his return trip, he is able to share a little bit more, clarify. And he's, I would say, probably better accepted now. There's less of a violent sway or attitude, I think, among people. And, a lot of people think that he's a cult leader, but even if they think he is, they're not going to attempt to end his life. Anyway, I want to say that all of my knowledge about abortion comes from this man. And so if you really want to find the truth and express in a better way, I would suggest going to his YouTube channel. He does have a YouTube channel, and it is, you can type it in youtube.com/Wizard Shack. That's spelled WIZARDSHAK. I'll also put a link in the description of this video. But yeah, this is a big deal for Americans now. I mean, it's always been a big deal, but I believe in New York State, my home state, they legalized abortion up to the third trimester, or the last, 90 days before a woman typically gives birth. And so you have a baby that's nearly fully formed. It doesn't look like, an embryo anymore. And many doctors are willing to abort such a baby. Abortion has always been an issue throughout time. But in America, I think during the 70s, there was Roe v. Wade, which was a law that was passed allowing abortion under certain conditions. And I understand that even if abortion was not allowed in our country, many people would still do it. So the important thing is to understand the morality of it and understand the truth of, the soul and the truth of the human being, and ask the question, is abortion murder? And basically I'm saying that it is murder. And this is coming from someone who has donated to Planned Parenthood. I donated $1,000 a few years ago. And then when I was in Fargo, North Dakota, in Fargo, we had the number one or the only abortion clinic in the state. And I went to a fundraising campaign there, or not there, but at this, site. And I donated $500 to this organization that gave women who wanted to abort their child funds and traveling costs and, support. So it wasn't directly towards abortion, but it was indirectly for abortion. So I was actually for abortion. I thought the idea of having a child or bearing a child that you don't want to have, knowing that you don't want to have them, and knowing that they might endure serious, projections. I felt that it would be better that that child never was. And at that time, I was leaning towards atheism, so I didn't believe, or at least I was trying not to believe that there was a God, and trying not to believe that there was a spirit world. And my conclusion was that ultimately, it's all about resources on the planet now. It's not a moral issue so much as well, it is moral, but in an atheistic way. So anyway, I have come to know the truth, and I want to share it. And this is my little attempt to do that. I'm also going to try to put in some links to specific videos where Jesus talks about, he goes into the finer details about abortion. But this is just going to be a off-the-cuff video that I'm making here, expressing everything that I know about it. So here goes. I guess everyone is really asking, when is a human being a human being? And I know that when I was looking into abortion, when I was starting to become more religious and starting to really search for the truth again, allowing God into the picture, I looked into some ancient Christian scholars that talked about it, and it varies. I think, anyway, there's all kinds of ideas about when the human being is actually a human being. Some people think that it's 3 months after conception. Some people think it's 2 weeks. Some people think it's 6 weeks. So here's the truth. Ready? The truth is that life begins at conception. So what do I mean by conception? My understanding currently is that when a sperm fertilizes an egg, and a cell is made that's a wholly unique cell unto itself, that's separate from the mother and father, and that is the moment at which the human being begins. Now I say that, but what I really mean is that who we are as human beings is we are souls, and God has created an uncountable amount of souls. We don't know how many souls God has created, but souls that have not incarnated onto the earth, that's the best term for it, are unaware, and they are unable to go through a process of growth. And it is essential that the soul incarnates at the time of conception in order to begin the process of education and growth. It begins the process of coming into itself, knowing itself, and growing into the perfect human being that God, that is the destiny of all the souls that God has created. So actually, we do exist before we incarnate, but we are just unaware. So there's the truth. Need I say more? I think there's a lot more to say. So basically what happens is one soul has one soul basically will split and become two parts. Basically what happens is that one part of the soul incarnates into a physical body and a spirit body. So the cell at the time of conception represents the physical body that is growing. And I don't know what the spirit body looks like, but the spirit body, as I understand, is very similar to the physical body. When we pass from the earth, we look much like we do now in our form. Anyway, so at that time, the soul, one part of the soul will incarnate into one physical body and one spirit body. So now you have a human being that is a soul, a spirit body, and a physical body. Then, sometime later, the other part, the only other part of that soul, will incarnate, typically somewhere close by in proximity to the first soul, or the first part of the soul that incarnated, the first half of the soul. And that part of the soul gets a physical body and a spirit body. So what I'm talking about here is the reality of the soulmate relationship. And the soul always has a relationship with itself between the two parts. Yeah, that's the really fascinating thing, is that you share your soul with one other human being somewhere on the earth or in the spirit world. So that's very relevant and important information. So if you ever hear people say, like I was listening to this podcast today called Soulmate Stories, really lovely podcast, and people like to. I hear people say things like, I really believe there's someone out there for everyone, and that's actually literally true. There is someone out there for you. So that's the reality of the soulmates and the soulmate relationship, and it is our destiny to find our soulmate and have conjugal love, sexual love with that person. So one other thing, many women will know, especially I think it happens with women who are more emotionally in tune with themselves and more emotional in a good way. Many women know when the soul connects to the newly formed physical body within themselves. So it's a really interesting phenomenon that you can ask women who have become pregnant. And I have done this, and I think I've had at least 2 occasions where I've had an affirmative response, and it was really, people were shocked that I was asking it because it's not a common question. But, sometimes you can know when someone's telling the truth, and I could tell that they knew when it happened, and it was interesting that I was asking them. Also, in my own conception, my father had this mystical dream to do with a leader in the faith that I grew up in. And when he woke up, my mother came to him and said, "If we have a child, it's all right." And that was kind of her way of communicating that she had a very good feeling that she had just conceived. And it was true. And that was my conception. So when we talk about aborting a child, we are talking about murdering a newly formed physical body. So what you're doing there is essentially preventing the child from having a life on the earth. Now, of course, you can see that doesn't mean that the child will disappear. It will not be blotted out from existence. The child, that one part of the soul, now has only its soul and its spirit body. So, what happens when a child is aborted after conception? The child goes to the spirit world permanently. It finds a location to live. And because of the trauma of its short life, it now needs to have some special assistance to grow up and to be educated. And there are loving nurse-like spirits, with a lot of parental love, who assist these aborted children. And it even happens in the case of miscarriages. So a miscarriage is a situation where you don't purposefully abort the child, but due to emotions that you have, the child finds it impossible to continue living. and a miscarriage occurs. That, of course, is a very sad thing. I knew a couple closely. I knew a man who I thought was going to be, pro-choice on the issue of abortion, but after having kids and after having a miscarriage, he went firmly on the side of pro-life. So, and that really struck me. That was one of the moments where I started, looking away from the conventional wisdom on abortion and pro-choice, the pro-choice argument for it. Many people do find that after they have children, they see the evils of abortion. So if you have never had a child, maybe wait before you go to the pro-choice side. Maybe wait and have a child first. But I want to say that you should have some desire to have a child, not just for that issue, of course, or for that reason. The troublesome thing is that a child that is aborted feels often a lot of attachment towards their birth parents, or the two people that brought them into the world. And that makes it very hard for them to continue. Also, the parents often feel a sense of guilt and pain associated with the child that they were not able to deliver. That does remain with them. Talk to many women who have aborted children and men too, and they may show you the truth that they have. It was a very painful thing for them, and it still is. There are, of course, many people that are on the pro-choice side that want to deny how painful it was, and they want to push it down, which is a common human trait. It's a fallen trait where you don't want to feel your emotions. You don't want to feel how painful the pain that you have inside of you is. So you may find people who say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm great. It was a good choice. I'm glad I aborted it. It needed to happen. That child didn't have, any means to have a happy life, and I made the right choice." But inside they're squirming, and it's someone that is in a heavy state of denial and especially anger who is willing to say such things. Another quick story. I knew a woman. What was her name? Shirley? It wasn't Shirley, but anyway. Who, I believe she had a miscarriage. I don't think it was an abortion. It might have been, but I'm pretty sure it was a miscarriage. Anyway, 8 years or so after her miscarriage, she woke up from bed late at night in a half awake, half asleep state. And she actually saw this little boy sitting on the side of her bed, looking at her. And she didn't have any children, or so she thought. And it was this very powerful experience for her. And even as she recalled it to me, she was on the verge of tears. And I think she did, have to cry a little bit, which was fine. And I think she got some advice from a psychic or something later, suggesting that, that was very likely your child. And I confirmed that for her based on my knowledge that, based on the time difference and everything, that very likely was your child. So that does happen in fact, it happens all the time where children who have been aborted or miscarried will visit there that I might take a moment to discuss, where if someone passes from the earth, a father, a mother, a brother or sister, a friend that you're very close to, a child, if you feel a lot of grief associated with the passing of that person, then you will actually pull them to you. And this is not always a good thing, because you're pulling them to you in your own pain. And what you're doing is you're kind of saying, like, you can't move on. I still need you. You can't go. No, you can't go. You have to be with me. And, that's a very demanding position to be in, or it's a very demanding position to be in. You have a lot of demand for this person who has passed on, who in many cases is, in whatever happens, every human being passes to a location in the spirit world, whether it's in the lower hells or, the lower heavens to the higher heavens. They're passing into the perfect condition that they need to pass into. They are passing into a condition where they have all the opportunities to go through the major issues that they need to go through in their life. All the grief that they have, all the sadness, all the pain, all the anger, the fear, the anxiety, the anguish that they have. Their environment is reflecting those things that are in their soul. So as they are attempting to deal with those things, now they have one other thing to contend with, which is a human being on the earth that is pulling them, that is expressing a demand towards them. And spirits who have passed on can resist that demand, but it's difficult. It's one more, effort that they have to deal with. So it really is best if you've miscarried or aborted, and this can be a man or the father or the mother. It's very important to understand that the choice to abort a child is a choice that is made by at least two people. You can have the mother that says, I want to abort the child, and the father who says, I really don't want you to do that. Please don't do that. Please understand that this is, God's child. They deserve an opportunity to be in the world. You can have the father that says, I want to abort the child. And the mother says, please don't tell me to do that. I want to keep this child. Please don't pressure me in that manner. So it's very important to understand that so many emotions go into this decision to abort a child, and it's not even the emotions of the people that have attracted that child into the world. It's also the emotions of those people, the members of the family of those people, and the wider society. So of course, a society that accepts abortion and promotes abortion, you will have more abortions in that society, and the blame is spread among everyone that supports it. So it's very important to understand that it's not just about the woman. I hear a lot of people who talk about abortion who say, it's my choice as a woman. This is my body. Actually, that's not true. There is a new body inside of you. And that's just the way it is. You had a choice to have sex in many cases, not in rape, of course, but and if you were not ready to have a child, then you really should have had some kind of protection or something like that. And of course, it goes the same for a man who has sex and is not using protection and attracts a new soul into the world. They should not be having sex if they're being incredibly irresponsible if they have sex without the desire to have a child. So it's very important to understand that abortion is a choice made by at least two people. So if that helps some women, maybe that's good, because it's good to know that, all the onus and the responsibility behind the decision is not placed firmly on your shoulders. What else can I say about this? I think it's important to understand that there are spirits in the spirit world who are nursing these children who have entered the spirit world. And I don't mean nursing by giving them like breast milk. I mean nursing like, I don't know how vital life elements work in the spirit world. I don't understand how food and, liquid works, or what role it plays for the upkeep of the human body, or the spirit body in the case of the spirit world. But I think that primarily the nursing that goes on is this emotional support and a firm, loving, I almost want to cry. I kind of want to cry saying this, but a very loving soul that wants to love the child and assist the child in its growth, because this child didn't have an opportunity to grow on earth. So now it has to grow in the spirit world. So it's a very difficult experience. That child will grow up in the spirit world feeling like they lost an opportunity. They didn't have the same opportunity that many other children on earth had. That's a very sad thing to go through, maybe. And I really wish that children, it's like any other sadness or grief that you have. If you can feel that pain, then you can be liberated from it. So if you cry and you feel how difficult it feels inside of yourself, then you can be free of that hang up. I feel like it's possible that there are some people that are around me that I feel I might feel their emotions, or there's also one time where I had sex with a lady and I was irresponsible, and I think she got the morning after pill, which I'm not sure if that is an abortion or not. I mean, I don't know if a child had incarnated. I don't think it happened, but she took the morning after pill in case. As I understand, if the morning after pill is taken and conception has already occurred, I think it's very possible that a child may have been attracted to a body by the time the morning after pill is taken. And I think it may very well be that is a kind of abortion. That's a gray area I don't really understand, but I think Jesus at least one time does mention that. It's very important that when you're having sex that you have some form of protection. If you don't want to have a child, that you have some kind of protection that prevents, fertilization, possible fertilization. So it has to be preventative. But anyway, as I was saying, like these spirits who nurse children, I'm sure they love doing what they're doing, but I'm sure they would also love to be doing other things. As with any sin, every time a human being sins, they divert from the path towards God. They slightly walk. They walk opposite to. Sorry, I'm not finding the words for it, but they divert slightly from what Jesus would call it is the divine love path. At the time that the first human ancestors fell, they chose self-reliance again instead of God reliance, and they walked away from God essentially. And every time that happens, there has to be a dispensation for a restoration towards an original condition. And that's what we have to realize with sin, is that there's no excuse for it. Every sin has a consequence. Every unloving act that we do has a consequence. Of course, the good news is that every loving act, every act that has a motivation of love behind it, has a positive consequence for ourselves and the world. So, what else can I say about abortion? I've gone about 30 minutes now, and I've covered a lot. I feel like there's one other thing that I wanted to say, but I think I am not going to remember it, so I don't want to tarry on any further. Thanks for watching this. I hope some of it was meaningful to you. The quality of truth is that it frees you from ignorance. That is, if you absorb it. You can have the truth presented to you, and like one of Jesus' parables, like in one of Jesus' parables, it can fall on hard ground, on dry ground, and not germinate. But if we hear the truth and we allow it to be absorbed into us, then we can use that as a foundation for decisions in our life. So thank you for watching. Anything that I have forgotten to mention, I will write in the description below. And that's it.